Hello and welcome, and in today's video I am going to be discussing Walter Stahlecker, who was the head of Einsatzgruppe A, and this is someone to whom I've referred various times in various videos. For example, I was in Lithuania in July 2025 and I made various videos relating to the Holocaust in Lithuania. And Walter Stahlecker, as head of Einsatzgruppe A, he murdered nearly 250,000 people. 250,000. It is an enormous amount of people killed in the space of 8 months. And indeed, because the killing largely took place in the first of those months, it's even more intense at the beginning of this period. So it's quite a horrendous number. And not only that, because he left a great deal of documentary evidence, because he was sending the reports back, we know about what happened, who was killed, or maybe not so much who, but how many people were killed in given locations and when they were killed. And so it's really quite horrendous, but despite all this, he's not such a well-known person. As I think that any assessment of him as his role as commander of Einsatzgruppe A must confront a central problem of the sources, and we have to bear in mind that what we know is largely from his own reports. Now, he sent documents which were called the operational reports from the USSR, and he also sent longer activity reports to Heydrich, and these reports, they're self-serving, they're strategically crafted, and they are ideologically filtered documents of a Nazi killing apparatus. And they're written with a clear audience in mind. So it's Heinrich Himmler and the leadership of the Reich Security Main Office, RSHA. So they were instruments of career advancement as much as records of events. And so this can perhaps explain their distinctive tone, a combination of bureaucratic precision, ideological justification, repeated emphasis on words such as initiative, effectiveness, success. And these reports, they're not just an accounting exercise, they're a demonstration of loyalty and efficiency, and to show that Einsatzgruppe A was not merely following orders, but it was excelling in their execution. So one of the most striking features of Stahlecker's self-reporting is his insistence that mass murder was due to local initiatives, and it was socially embedded in the places where the murders were taking place. In his October 1941 report, he emphasized the alleged difficulty of instigating pogroms and stressed the importance of mobilizing indigenous anti-Semitic forces. This framing served several purposes. It presented the killings as quasi-organic or a quasi-organic expression of local hostility rather than as Nazi-imposed policy, and therefore it diffused responsibility. And this aligned neatly with what Himmler was trying to demonstrate, a preference for violence that appeared to arise from below, from the people, so to speak. Now, I think it's quite obvious that this wasn't the case. Certainly, the local collaborators did participate. I mean, that's absolutely clear. I mean, there were some places where they absolutely enthusiastically, but the decisive initiative came from the Nazi security police. The orders, the logistical planning, the selection of targets, the escalation of the murders to include women and children, these were driven by Einsatzgruppe leadership. It was driven by Stahlecker. It was so it was coming from him, and then he was just passing the orders down to who was to be, or where the killings were to take place. Survivor testimony, post-war trials and regional studies in Lithuania, Latvia and Estonia showed local violence was typically activated, structured and supervised by German officers. Stahlecker's portrayal of reluctant Germans coaxing volatile locals into action therefore reads less as a description than as an excuse in exculpatory narrative management, I think is the word that's used. And another thing which actually we can see in what Stahlecker writes is that he writes about the necessity for security, and this is to say that the killings were taking place as measures against what he termed partisans, saboteurs, Bolshevik functionaries, even when the victims were overwhelmingly Jewish civilians, including the infants and the elderly. And we can see from mass grave exhumations, demographic studies, eyewitness accounts, that these justifications were completely fictitious. In regions declared free of Jews, such as Estonia, there had been no meaningful partisan activity whatsoever at the time the extermination was done. In fact, I think it's the case just about everywhere. But I mean, above all in Estonia, this is one of the most blatant lies. The Estonian population, to a large extent, welcomed the arrival of the Wehrmacht. I mean, let's face it, what had happened under Stalin had been terrible. Something like 2% of the entire population had been deported out in the brief period of Stalinist occupation. Even in the previous week before the war started, something more than 10% of the entire Jewish population of Estonia had been deported out by Stalin, and this was the reason why the number one reason why people, Jews in Estonia, survived. Incidentally, it's the number one reason why Polish Jews survived as well. To return to Stahlecker, and one of the, perhaps the most revealing thing about his claims, and this is repeated implicitly throughout his report, that he was executing a coherent, pre-existing policy rather than shaping it. Yet comparisons with parallel Einsatzgruppen's reports suggest otherwise. Einsatzgruppe A consistently pushed the boundaries earlier and further than many other units. The rapid extension of killing operations to women and children, the early declaration of entire regions as Judenfrei, and the systematic scale of executions all point to initiative at the command level. Later, I think we've tended to treat Stahlecker not as a executor of orders, but he is an important operational innovator in the radicalization of genocide. And the evidence that's come up since the end of the war has confirmed this, I would say. During the Einsatzgruppen trial in Nuremberg, surviving officers from other units described a process of cumulative radicalization driven by competitive pressure, reporting expectations, and perceived signals from above. Although Stahlecker, of course, was dead, he was by March 1942 was killed. He never stood trial. His reports were entered into evidence and scrutinized against other documentation at the trial, where they could be cross-checked against Wehrmacht diaries, civilian records, or survivor testimony. They were often shown to be accurate in scale, but deceptive in attribution and motivation. The numbers were broadly real, but the narrative explaining them wasn't. In this sense, Stahlecker's reports are invaluable precisely because of their distortions. They reveal how a senior perpetrator wanted to mass murder people, he wanted the murder of these people to be understood by his superiors as disciplined, necessary, locally supported, ideologically justified. Read critically and in conjunction with independent efforts, they also expose the gap between self-representation and reality, between the language of security and the practice of genocide. So Walter Stahlecker didn't merely document the Holocaust in its early phase. Through his reports, he actively shaped the internal narrative of extermination, helping to normalize, rationalize, and bureaucratize mass murder at the highest levels of the SS. His self-reporting, therefore, stands not only as a source for what happened in the Baltic and indeed a part of Russia for that matter, but as evidence of how genocide was intellectually managed, justified, and escalated from within. One of the people who was interrogated both at Nuremberg trials and he was put on trial, the Einsatzgruppen trial, was Otto Ohlendorf. I've done videos of him. I've done his testimony in full at Nuremberg in a separate video. And Ohlendorf said that he believed that some reports, and clearly he's referring to Stahlecker, although not directly by name, were exaggerated, as though it were some type of a competition to see who could lay their hands on the most people and then murder them. Right, so I've done other videos on Stahlecker. I'll put links in. I'm actually writing another one at present to be even more complex than the ones I've done so far. And anyway, I don't know when that'll be finished. But I did go to the hometown of Stahlecker in April of 2025. Sternenfels, and to me, of all the places I've been to related to the Holocaust, this is one that really affected me the most, and it was maybe because it was of its banality. This village, this really quiet village, where his father had been the pastor, and so I stood outside the church. The thing was this: I didn't even go in the church, and but this was at Easter as well, so that made it a bit more. How should I put it? A bit, even more extreme. Easter, sort of a time when Jews were often murdered because they go the people go to the church on the Sunday, and they'd come out sort of full of hate towards the Jews who had allegedly killed this Jewish person, Jesus, and then they would steal from them. I mean, that obviously didn't happen in Germany, but it did happen in Poland. In fact, I've even spoken to people who were. I can recall it happening, and so that the whole thing was it was totally bizarre, and I even spoke to people there about it, and of course nobody knew, and there was no signs up anywhere about what had happened at this church, and certainly the father who sort of brought his children up in this nationalist manner. Like the father of Horst Wessel, for example, Horst had done videos on, and this the various churches, but in this case the father clearly has a lot to answer for. I would have had a lot to answer. The father died, I think it was 1947, if memory serves me correctly. So for the moment, thanks very much for listening. Anyway, so I've done lots of videos on this type of thing, and so I upload every Tuesday, every Friday with longer videos, such as this type of length. And on other days, I do videos up to 3 minutes in length, and they're usually in shorts format. But I change this sometimes. I mean, it was always on Tuesday and Fridays longer videos, but on the other days there might be one as well, and something to do live things as well. This would have been better given to a live, but then it's not it's not always possible. And I've had it hanging around now for some time. I wrote it some time ago. So also there is membership if you're interested. It costs £5, €6, $6. Gives you access to more than 800 videos at present. For the moment anyway, I'm normally in Germany and Poland, so that's why 20 hours every day, so that's Central European time. I'm now in the United Kingdom, but anyway, it's all the best from me from near London. Bye for now.